I have tried several times to make this stupid ass video, and I just didn't know how to go around doing it. I recorded a whole segment trying to get this video done, and listened to the audio, and it was complete shit. So here's try 15 at doing a YouTube video when I haven't done one in such a stupid ass long time.
Maybe I'm not qualified, but I've been nominated to try. So that's what I'm going to do.
As everyone well knows, Laci Green has decided to start talking to people she opposes. She's released several videos discussing her feminist views and why she believes they are true versus the things that she's heard from anti-feminist and anti-social justice people. While her intentions are good and pure, I thought it would be an interesting point to take a look at a view from a ideological perspective and the exodus thereof. There was a study done called the Amazing Conversions. It was done in 1995, where it analyzed people that were leaving a religion, going from super Catholic, for example, to atheist, and the opposite, going from atheist to ultra-religious, and what happened in those situations. Going to ultra-religious aside, what we're looking at is an exodus instead. So, in the case of Laci Green, what we know is that she's an ex-Mormon. What we can know from the Mormon culture, in particular, is that the Mormon culture is very good at making any woman that belongs within the religion to be subservient to their man or codependent. We know this because of their doctrine. For example, the Mormons have 3 tiers of heaven. You can't enter the highest tier of heaven without your husband having been sealed in the Mormon temple, calling your sacred or secret name in order for you to enter the temple, enter the celestial kingdom, as they call it. Furthermore, the only people that can ordain you into the position where you can go to that heaven is those that hold the priesthood. Those that are in the priesthood are only men. No women are allowed to hold the priesthood. Up until the Civil Rights Movement, and when Jim Crow was just barely getting demolished and whatnot, the Mormons used to say that all people that have anything but white skin are cursed. In fact, it's still in their Book of Mormon. If you look up the first book of Nephi is what it's called. Cursed skin is called out explicitly, saying that God has cursed their skin and made them dark, so they are evil spawns of Satan. So in addition to being racist, they're also extremely sexist, because there's nothing else you can do except for go through a man to do anything within the church. It's completely reliant on men to do all the heavy lifting ideologically. It's no surprise that if you're in a deep ideological position where men are the only ones that can save your soul, essentially, that you would come to the conclusion that feminism is a really good idea. This is because in the time that feminism, the first and second wave, came to fruition, it was a good idea. Women were definitely in suffrage. They weren't allowed to vote. They weren't allowed equal pay. They weren't allowed positions of high authority. They were often thought of being less intelligent than your average man. None of this is obviously true. Ironically, it's the biggest lie ever told by ideological zealots. In fact, if we look into Islam, women are responsible for their own rape. That's why they have to cover up, to protect from the gaze of the evil man. Because if man looks at them and rapes them, it's not the man's fault, and you can't prove that it happened without 4 other guys watching. And then all 4 guys saying that, yeah, that was a rape. No, it's definitely the woman's fault. So even today, we have an ideological diatribe of stupidity that puts down women. So when Laci Green looks at Mormonism and says that's utter bullshit, feminism makes a hell of a lot of sense. What's interesting is that she jumped into feminism when feminism was useless. It's achieved a lot of the things that it achieved in the West. There is still a great deal of things it needs to achieve. Feminism, for example, should be focusing on the abduction of women and children into slave labor or sex slaves. It should be looking into prostitution and how male pimps control women to get money. It should look into the physical, mental, and emotional abuse that Islam gives to women through the power of their male-dominated ideology. It does none of those things. It'd rather complain about how much they don't get paid, which is actually not true. They'd rather complain about the patriarchy in a place that the patriarchy doesn't exist. They'd rather try to make it intersectional and blame the cis white male for everything that exists wrong in this world, when it's absolutely not true. And it's completely ridiculous. So I'd like to look at a few clips that she's done in one of her latest videos and kind of address those things.
And it has gotten to the point where I'm just sort of going round and round and round, trying to explain why I see value in talking to people who are hostile to feminism.
Do you have any suggestions what we should do?
It's actually quite valuable to hear both sides, because then people that are listening to either side can hear the value of both positions. They can listen to the arguments, the facts stated, or the position or the emotional appeal stated to either side, and make a determination whether or not one side is true or not. What's interesting with the anti-feminists is that they argue the positions and really want to talk to people. The feminists themselves do not want to talk to a single one. They're more concerned about getting their feelings hurt than presenting the arguments. Now, if they were to actually argue the points, they would lose, because none of their evidence actually supports what they are saying. They know this, just like the creationist knows this, that if you're trying to argue a position from facts, the best you can do is slam the facts. The problem with this particular religion is that it's secular, so what they argue with is peer-reviewed journals and articles, but unfortunately they've created an echo chamber in that same space. So I can see why you're going around and around. It's not surprising at all.
Being sensitive and considerate is just like a good thing to do, and I try to do it to the best that I can, but it got to this point where, at one point I'm listening to like 1 million different people's feelings on this stuff. It got unhealthy, okay? Like, I was obsessing over every word that came out of my mouth, every way I could be misconstrued or accidentally cause harm.
Words are cheap, and they don't scare me one bit.
This is an interesting point. You would care more about the feelings of the person than refuting what they say. I think this is the problem of the anti-SJWs, actually. We don't give a shit how people feel. We care about the truth. This raw adherence to knowing what is and what isn't makes us look like a bunch of jerk faces, essentially. As if we're very callous and brute and rude. And in fact, this is partially true. I find myself to be rather cynical. Not surprisingly, I come off as kind of a jerk to many people. Some people don't know how to receive criticism. What they do is they assume that the person is attacking them rather than criticizing their ideas. They take it personal because the thing that is being criticized they hold valuable. This is a common thing among people who have an ideological position. A colleague of mine once said that criticism is a gift, and then I heard another colleague say, criticism is the gift that you may never want. It could be the best gift you've always expected and wanted for Christmas. It also could be your grandma's very ugly sweater that you wear once. The fact that you wear it once at least adheres and acknowledges that you received this gift. Not necessarily that you want it or is it any good, but at least you received it. I find this analogy appropriate because perhaps you should consider this too. You're going to offend somebody. You're going to hurt somebody's feelings. You cannot make everyone happy, and to try and do so is pretty much going to hurt yourself in the long run. So it's good that you've noticed this. However, at the same time, I can see why it didn't work out very well for you and why you're getting frustrated and stressed over this.
Because in my book, this is not feminism. This is bullying.
It seems to me that you're the judge here.
Interesting that you should say that. It's not feminism, it's bullying. What happened at VidCon is feminism, and it's bullying. Anita Sarkeesian is a bully, and I'm planning on doing a different video about that type of bullshit altogether. Not necessarily in her in the drama, because that's been done to death, and everyone and their dog was there, so it's easy to do and capture. Ideologies that try to seize power by any means necessary will resort to bullying intimidation tactics when necessary in order to maintain that power. This has never been anything different than any other religion. When the Christians tried to seize power through Constantine, they did the similar thing to every other religion. They bullied their way, got some people in power, and were able to subjugate everyone else into Christianity. Muslims do the exact same thing, and in fact, it's in their doctrine that if anybody doesn't believe, you either convert them, you subjugate them, or you kill them. There's really only 3 options. Many other people have put this out in Islam that that's what it is, and if you ask anyone in there, you'll get a billion different stories. I, on the other hand, go to the source. Read the Quran, there it is. Holy shit, my favorite verse in the Quran is 8:12. Why? Because it says to behead me and remove my fingertips because I say Allah is not real. It's my favorite verse also because I can always ask a Muslim, how am I taking that out of context when it says in your book to kill me? Moving on.
To those of you who've been asking, does this mean you're not a feminist anymore? I will always be a feminist.
Nonsense.
And this is where I think you're a liar. You will not always be a feminist. And the reason why I say this is because feminism is an ideology. Much like the way you reasoned your way out of Mormonism, you too will end up reasoning your way right out of feminism. That's because feminism has taken an ideological position, an ideological stance, that is factually incorrect. And the more you dig into science, as you've said, that science and reason and logic are the foundations for your skepticism, you will find that every single argument from a feminist perspective is wrong. Sad to say, they've made their own dogma, and now they have to lie in it. Their philosophical positions are atrocious. I've said time and time again, the last bastion of hope for any ideology is philosophy. This is no different than any other religion. I theorize it won't take you 3 years, which is the average to leave an actual religion. I think it'll take a lot less than that. You've reasoned your way into feminism. You can reason your way out of it. In fact, I don't actually agree that anything that you've not reasoned your way into, you can't reason your way out of. I don't think that's true. That's because the way people approach a reason is through debate, through regurgitation of information, through facts. There's a better way, and it's been done for thousands of years, and it's called the Socratic method. In fact, many people will attest that using the Socratic method will get you out of an ideological position, because then you find out that you can't reason your way into believing said position. So I disagree with this statement for that very reason.
I believe in social justice. I believe in the issues that I've talked about and the causes that I've campaigned for. That is why I'm here.
I have to admit, it always comes to the same thing.
And there you go. You believe in these things. But are they true? Belief does not make fact. Belief does not make reality. You can believe many things. Does not make them true. You can believe in UFOs. That may be true, but there's no evidence for them. You can believe that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. But if you believed that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, I think you'd be backwards. But it's still a belief. You could believe the earth is flat, but is it? See, that's the problem. The difference between belief and no. You believe these things to be true. You believe that they are good causes. But are they really? If you took the time to reason, I don't think you'll be holding on to them much longer.
And then I watched some of the, more extreme antis go on these tirades against people that I know and seeing how they affect those people, and it's just, there's a lot of toxicity there. I couldn't even answer email from my viewers without having to go through a stream of graphic rape threats.
I have to say on this particular subject, and it's been said quite a bit, that anybody that treats anyone that way is not contributing to the discourse. What they're doing is getting away with being a douchebag online.
You need to understand how this conversation looks to people like me, to people on the outside of your bubble, because this is all I saw every day. And no, it's not the whole picture. Just like social justice warriors bastardizing feminism, this is what anti-feminism looks like.
Oh, that was stupid. And you're gonna regret it.
So question on that, Laci. Have you ever had, a gang of people write some letters to your employer trying to tell them that you're a Nazi and try to get you fired? Have you ever had hit pieces written on you because you disagreed with somebody that was on the feminist side? Have you ever had your job in jeopardy as a position of authority? For example, say you're a senator and somebody tries to get you fired because you don't believe in what they believe. These have all happened on people that have stood up against feminism. Every last one of them. The difference between us and them is very stark. you may get some nasty things. You probably get some death threats. You probably get some really fucked up shit. No one can deny that because there are douchebags and trolls on the internet. However, let's take the recent events that happened with Sargon, for example, and Anita. Would you find it okay for somebody to just write to .mike, make a hit piece, write on Feminist Frequency, and then write to a few other places that are relatively good positions of power, and then try to get somebody's income dissolved because they said something you didn't want to hear, or they happen to be in your presence and you didn't want them there? Do you find that appropriate?
But I do think that if the goal genuinely is dialogue, that people need to be condemning this stuff when they see it. And, being thoughtful not to egg it on. Even without the fringier stuff. These angry pylons on YouTube don't exactly say, let's talk.
Start on my signal. Now do it. You men, attack.
I honestly don't know what videos you've been watching, but I see quite the opposite. I've seen attempt after an attempt after an attempt to try and talk to these people, and it failed miserably. So what do they resort to? Debunking the arguments. What happens in result? Oh, that's criticism. They're calling me names. I'm hurt. Therefore, retribution. I'm not going to talk to them. And then you got douchebags like this.
You're pushing toxic bullshit. If you want to argue about, what economic policy is best, sure, let's have that argument. If you want to talk about what's the best way to combat climate change, absolutely, let's have that argument. If you want to argue whether or not God exists, let's have that argument. That would be fun. If you want to argue whether or not women deserve equal rights, fuck you. If you want to argue whether or not black folks deserve to live lives free of police brutality and systemic racism and brutalization, if you think that's a subject for argument, fuck you. Argue with somebody else. You're not going to argue with me about it. If you want to argue whether or not it's okay that somebody fucking punches a white supremacist in the face, if you want to tell me that I should feel bad about that, fuck you.
That guy? So what?
Yeah, I guess it's okay to punch a Nazi in the face, but when everybody's a Nazi, that means everybody gets punched. Try and punch me. Watch what happens.
But I think we can all agree that this kind of shit's uncool, right?
Absolutely. We can agree that kind of shit is very uncool.
My question for you all, antis, what have your interactions been like with feminists and feminism? Is there any sort of, key moment that caused you to feel strongly against feminism?
That's strange. That's the question I want to ask you.
That brings me to my last topic and a kind of closure on this. I don't think you're going to stay with feminism very long, or social justice. The more you reason, the more you realize that it's full of crap. There is a couple things, though, I want to point out that's happening to you from your side of the fence. See, there's a bunch of texts and, I guess, public comments that you've pointed out where people have just been absolutely crazy towards you because you've decided to talk to the other side. Not necessarily leave your ideological position, although they've ousted you from your sphere of super best friends, but I'm not entirely surprised. When somebody leaves an ideology, especially a cult-like ideology, the first thing they try to do is shame you back into that ideology. That clearly didn't work, so they're trying everything in their power to try and destroy you. Doesn't work either. But then you started dating somebody. And this is what I got to say to anybody that decided to poke their nose into that business.
Nobody was asking you to interfere with what's going on. You've gone too far.
Yeah, it's absolutely nobody's business who you're seeing. I don't care. I don't know either one of you. It's none of my business. So why is everybody trying to make it theirs?
To each his own.
I'm glad I got it finished. I hope you enjoy it. I have many more coming ahead, especially with this new latest drama that just happened. I'm going to do a little piece that has been personal to me for quite a while.